Hey guys, the purpose of this video is to show how we can solve proportions using cross multiplication. Okay, so proportions are when you have two ratios or two fractions that are equal to another. Now, what you may notice is that all of these proportions or all of these equations have variables. So variables look like letters, and what we are trying to do is figure out which number makes this equation true. So we are solving for a variable. Okay, so we are going to use cross multiplication, which means we are going to take our cross products and set them equal to one another. Okay, just like we did when we were checking if our ratios were equivalent. Okay, so I am going to set up an equation and I'm going to show all my work. Okay, I'm going to set this up saying 2 times x, or x times 2. Usually when we have variables and numbers, we always put the number first. So 2 times x, which we can write as 2x, is equal to 3 times 6. Okay, so now that I have this equation, let's see what I can actually do. This 2 times x, I can't do anything with that yet. But I can multiply 3 times 6. So 3 times 6 is 18. Okay, so the whole purpose, again, is to solve for x, which means we want to get x all by itself. And right now, x is not by itself because it has a 2 next to it. Okay, and we can get rid of that 2 by using inverse operations, which means just the opposite. So if this really means 2 times x, the opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide both sides of the equation by 2, which leaves me with x equals 9. Okay, so now I'm done. And if I want, I can go back and check my work by substituting that 9 back into the original equation and making sure that these fractions are indeed equivalent. So 9 divided by 3 is 3. 6 divided by 2 is also 3. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's move on to the next one. So notice that my variable is on the bottom right-hand side. That's okay. Our variables can be in any of the parts of the equation. So again, I'm going to use cross products. So I'm going to be multiplying across. Okay, and I'm going to set these equations equal to one another. So 8 times x is going to be equal to 4 times 6. Okay, so I can write this 8 times x as just 8x, or I can leave that little dot there. And I can actually do this multiplication. 4 times 6 is 24. Okay, so now again I'm trying to get x by itself, which means I need to undo this multiplying by 8, and I undo multiplication with division. So I'm going to divide both sides by 8. This cancels, and 24 divided by 8 is 3. And I can go back and check my work if I'd like. Okay, 8/4 needs to be equal to 6/3. I know 8 divided by 4 is 2, as well as 6 divided by 3 is 2. Okay, let's look at the next example. So again, I want to use cross products to solve this. So I'm going to set up my equation by saying x times 6, or 6 times x, is equal to 9 times 2. And notice, when I'm setting up these equations, I always like to put my number in front of the variable, and I usually write that down first. So 6 times x is equal to 9 times 2, which is 18. And then for my last step, I undo this multiplication with division. 18 divided by 6 is 3. Okay, last problem. Again, I am using cross products when I'm setting up my equation. And I like to write my number with my variable first, so 10 times n is going to be equal to 6 times 2. Okay, so 10 times n is equal to 12. And I undo this 10 times n by dividing both sides by 10. Now, one thing you may notice here, we got whole numbers for all of our answers before. 12 divided by 10 is not a whole number, but that's okay. Okay, you can either use your calculator and get a decimal, or I am just going to reduce this fraction and leave it as an improper fraction. So I know that 12 and 10 are both divisible by 2. So 12 divided by 2 is 6, and 10 divided by 2 is 5, and I'm going to leave my answer as 6/5.